Hi there, I'm Michael, CEO of Pillar. I will be your host today in this series of DeFi Crossing the Chasm. Our topic for today will be DeFi UX sucks. Why? We'll be exploring this issue with our panelists. And just to give you a background, DeFi has had a tremendous growth over the past year. In 2020, the beginning of 2020, the total value locked within the DeFi protocols was under $2 billion. And at the end of 2020, that went up to around $19 billion. And in this year, it peaked in over $81 billion. And any industry's strength can be measured with the insurance protection it provides. And the DeFi world, again, in 2020, the biggest insurer, which is Nexus Mutual, had around $4 million worth of assets locked. This year, though, it is about $250 million. This is a tremendous growth beyond anyone's wildest expectation. But let's compare it to the financial services or the traditional finance, where assets under management by financial services companies for their clients stands at about $103 trillion. And insurance underwriting stands at about $5.8 trillion. So this shows the length that DeFi has to go to even make it as a big impact in the bigger wide world. And in fact, it is 1,000 times it has to grow to come anywhere near the traditional finance. And to explore these issues and see where we will get the next 100 million users and the next users who do not care to learn about using the intricacies of the DeFi world, how to understand the APYs, etc. What do we have to do? We have exciting guests for you with immense expertise in their fields. And as such, we've got Amber Case. Amber, she's made it her mission to ensure that creators are compensated. And as such, she's currently a strategic advisor of Unlock. Unlock have created a protocol where creators monetize their content in very many ways, whether it is registration, whether it is online tickets, whichever way it comes, they should benefit from it. And Amber also a strategic advisor for Mozilla, and in that, the micropayment section as well. She's also a strategic advisor for Puma browser. And she was named previously as one of the most influential women in technology, 30 under 30 as well. She published a book, Calm Technology. She's an expert in UX matters. Hi there, Amber.
Hi, nice to meet you.
And we've also got Matt Cutler, a serial entrepreneur who's co-founded and led very many companies and had a successful exit in many of them. He's currently a co-founder and CEO of Blocknative. Blocknative is pretty much the linchpin for the usability of the Web3 services around. You name a trading service platform, a dApp, a wallet like Pillar Wallet, we all use the services of Blocknative underneath. When you send a token or receive a token, you get that little notification that is powered by Blocknative. So welcome, Matt.
Thank you, Michael. Happy to be here.
And we've got Bradley. Bradley comes from Unstoppable Domains. And Bradley also has quite a lot of startups under his belt. And his company's mission, he's a co-founder of Unstoppable Domain, and his mission and their mission is to humanize the blockchain address space. In doing so, what they have created is they've created a human readable address space for your cryptocurrencies. And they hope to get it accessible by very many decentralized websites in simplifying crypto payments and much more. Hi there, Bradley.
Thanks for having me. That's a great intro.
Thank you. So what we will do today is I will ask a couple of questions to our guests. Then I'll open the panel, the floor to everyone who has a question to ask, and hopefully we'd have an enlightened discussion. And feel free to chime in whenever you have a point to say. So don't wait for me to prompt, just jump in. My first question is to Amber. Amber, what is your take on onboarding creators to the DeFi services, and what challenges do you see in terms of usability?
Mm-hmm. I think that creators usually do think like it's very exciting if creators have meetups and there's a culture and there's a vocabulary, and there's usually like if you can get it to a point where you can show somebody, over drinks, like that you can install MetaMask wallet and let's say add a crypto paywall to your site or add web monetization really, really simply. That's one thing. But if you can show that people are making a living at it, that's another thing. And that's when it becomes really exciting, because I think a lot of creators have seen over the years, oh, here's this new thing, but there's a catch, right? Like you can sell something on Etsy, but you could, there could be this issue, right? Or you could use PayPal, but your funds could be frozen, or you could be on OnlyFans, but you could get taken away. So this era provides like the very first opportunity for people to kind of roll their own system without having to be reliant on something larger. And I think that is really exciting. I think some of it's a little bit, for some, let's say artists, they're like, oh, this is just a land grab and this is really annoying. Other people are like, oh my gosh, I could make anything and experiment and play. And I think the people who come to this industry who are interested in just like exploring like it as a playground and seeing where they can go, I think there's so much fun and opportunity. And the people who are like, oh my gosh, we need to have this very specific strategy and be, coming at it from like a very serious point of view, they're not going to have as much fun and be as flexible. So I think there's a lot of opportunities for super creative people to really change how things work. And I think the other issues just kind of like business model skeuomorphism. Like we bring things from Web 2.0 and we think that they will also work in Web 3.0 or what people are used to, and just like kind of clearing your mind and being prepared for anything and hanging out in some discords is a lot better than saying, okay, now the world is exactly like this and this is how it is, so just kind of letting go, I think, is the best strategy for a lot of people. And then just not being intimidated. Like I think the biggest hurdle is probably getting somebody to install a web wallet of some kind, whether that's a micropayments enabled web wallet or just something like MetaMask, or collect some weird NFTs that seem silly to you. So that's what I've seen of the past 12 months.
So how have the creatives you've been dealing with managed to get past the barrier of the educational aspect and the intricacies of understanding what MetaMask is, what a transaction fee is? Hang on a minute, there are so many blockchains. Which one do I do? Is it Bitcoin? Oh, this is Ethereum. Okay, on Ethereum, they say mainnet is such a, what is this? Now they're talking about layer 2 as well. I'm confused. How do they deal with it?
Yeah, well, what I've seen is on the Mozilla side, Mozilla Foundation and Grant for the Web have released $100 million in grant money to get people into web monetization. So that provides educational materials for setting up a web wallet, adding a web monetization pointer on your site, and starting to understand, what Interledger is. You don't have to write any code to be web monetized on that front. So I think that's really helpful, because a lot of those people who would have not even gotten into, let's say, DeFi or crypto or anything like that, it's kind of like a nice way to get them in, because, hey, we're paying you $50,000 to set up your dance studio with this, right? Like, this is an unheard of amount of money for some creators. So I think that part's really interesting. And I think the other part's just having small meetups and having these small Discord groups where people, it's kind of like, what happens when like your older sibling teaches you something? Like, if they're a good sibling, they teach you with kindness, right? You think they're really cool, you want to get involved, you don't know how, you're slightly intimidating, but somebody will sit down with you and they will show you. And I think the third thing to help people is hackathons. I learned about MetaMask and Rinkeby test network and Ethereum and the Polygon network because I was at a hackathon. I was like, okay, well, I need to test this and the gas fees are high. What do I do? And so I learned how to switch the network. And I think that really helps. Like there was a meetup that I went to where you couldn't pay in ETH, you pay in Matic, and then you'd get Matic back if somebody didn't show up, and that Matic pool for people that didn't show up would get paid back to you. And it was super silly. You got a proof of that you were there with little cute NFT, but that as a demo really, because it was silly. It was like, well, we're going to get beers. We got to pay the tab, this sort of thing. And I think the other funny thing is just like this thing called Dinner DAO. You pay 0.1 ETH, you get season tickets to a dinner. There's only 8 people. The page is really like silly. It's made by page, which is just like a really way. It's like kind of like a GeoCities like drag and drop or like an angel file or drag and drop type thing. But that, you can talk to people about DAOs and you can talk to people about NFTs when you're talking about dinner. It's a dinner party. So of course it's autonomous. Of course it's kind of decentralized. It's 8 people deciding what they want to do. Each month they could say, do you want to go to Arby's and save up the money for like a fancy dinner? Or do you want to donate it to earthquake rescue? You can make these decisions. And so I think like the more experimental silly groups that offer like an entry point in it's just kind of like the little toys, like the iPhone had the really stupid fart app where you could press a button and it would make a fart sound. Like that did more for helping 14-year-olds who would later be very successful app developers understand what you could do with this phone, because it has a pressure button and then it's like 20 lines of code, right? But that simple thing was easy to explain story, easy to trade, and it's hilariously inspirational and approachable. And so I think like the more toys I see in this space, the more we're seeing like a culture and an industry form out of play and collaboration versus like one person sitting alone being like, oh my gosh, I'm so intimidated, I don't know what to do. It's got to be done through groups, and it's more of like a swarm culture, more organic than it is like a one size fits all top down, which we kind of had as the Web 2.0 template itself type situation.
Okay, thank you for that. And for you, Matt, is this challenge, the adoption challenge, only limited to UX, or are there infrastructural changes and enhancements that could be required to enable this?
It's a great question. And I would say that it really, my observation is a combination of education and simplification for the user experience overall. Amber touched on this, that it's a mindset shift to work in this space. And many folks are sort of not really prepared for how significant of a mind shift it is. And even there's so many like built-in assumptions into how they engage in the world and do transactions. And the example I always give is people's most experience with transaction is at the grocery store with a credit card, right? And they just think that's like gravity. That's the way transactions work. And by the way, interestingly, it's worth Googling what happens every time you swipe your credit card. There's actually 6 different commercial entities that touches that piece of data in real time every single time. And a payment network orchestrates all that. It's shockingly complicated what's going on, but to the end user, it's quite fast and very straightforward, right? But moving to crypto, it's an entirely different transaction model. It actually works a fundamentally different way. And if you don't expect that, you don't actually have a mental model for what's going on with your transaction, it can be wildly disorienting because, you're expecting square peg and you get a round hole and then you're trying to jam it in there and it doesn't work very well. And so what we see is there's big opportunities to simplify the UX and streamline the UX. And there's sort of 2 schools of thought here. School of thought 1 is, poor little user, you're never going to get this. And so we're going to lie to you and we're going to basically make it like a credit card transaction, even though it's not. You can guess my feelings on the appropriateness of that. Or two, hey, we're going to be explicit to the end user and we're going to tell them what's going on, because an informed user is an empowered user, is a user that feels like they're in control of their experience and they can get things done. And of course, that's where we very much wind up, and our collaboration with Pillar reflects that, that fundamentally users are capable and it's important that they actually understand what's going on with value as it moves around these networks, and we need to reflect that to them. At the same time, the infrastructure can improve, right? That there are many aspects to the infrastructure which make it harder to understand what's going on. We spend a lot of our time on Ethereum. Ethereum recently made this major upgrade to what's called EIP 1559, which is this fundamental change of how transaction fees work. And it used to be really simple. You just sort of clubbed in your gas fee, click, you put in a number, and then you sent it in and you crossed your fingers and hope that it worked, okay? And the problem was the crossing of the fingers. And so what 1559 does is it changes things, so there's a lot less crossing of fingers. But now there's 3 numbers you got to pay attention to, not 1, and those numbers don't really work in this intuitive fashion. And so it turns out it's a lot of explaining to instruct users sort of what's going on with transaction fees and why to set them a certain way. And this number you're going to put in is abnormally high because you got to protect yourself against certain things, because if you don't, then it's going to, and you can just sort of watch users sort of turn their minds off when you do so. So my sense is there's a lot of opportunity and, quite frankly, a lot of innovation happening right now to simplify the infrastructure and orient the infrastructure around improve and streamline user experience. The common thing, everyone likes to think there's some magic crypto solution out there. There's some magic blockchain that does everything better or easier than something else. It's just a matter of trade-offs. And what we've seen repeatedly is people make trade-offs for speed. People make trade-offs for cost. People make trade-offs for decentralization. But people generally don't make trade-offs for usability, okay? So you'll get speed at the cost of usability. You'll get fees at the cost of usability. You'll get decentralization at the cost of usability. And as far as I know, there's no chain, there's no L1 or even an L2, which has said, you know what? We're just going to make this as usable as possible. And as a result, there's a lot of opportunity for innovation there as well. It's exciting to be a part of, and I think Amber did a really great job. I'm going to basically recommend my older brother listen to some of what she just had to say about the notion of play and experimentation and exploration and going in with an open mind, because quite frankly, that's the stage of evolution that we're at. It's a super exciting stage. It's a super constructive stage. But if you need it all spelled out for you, call me back in 2 years, okay?
Interesting you mentioned credit cards, because one of the examples I normally think of is when I go to the shop and I buy goods, all I do is use my contactless card, collect my goods, swipe and walk away. It's none of my business how the merchant is charged or the 9-layer of companies involved in making it happen, from the technology to the financial services. So then if we are comparing the crypto industry to that, are we not losing? Or what can we do to get closer to that, to compete with that?
Well, so I strongly recommend doing a little bit of research into the history of credit cards. It's a fascinating topic and well documented. And you got to realize that the credit card user experience that we all enjoy today is the result of, 60 years of continuous innovation. It's multiple decades long. And fascinatingly, Visa in particular has worked continuously to improve user experience across the board. In fact, in many ways, the origin of credit cards was to improve user experience for merchants, okay? And so the fact that credit cards are simple to use is no mistake, right? It has been an incredible level of investment of energy from a massive industry. And we in crypto, hey, we're a little more than a decade into our journey here, and we're still pretty early in that time cycle. We also, for a long period of our time cycle, it was largely dominated by technology folks who were not particularly UX constrained because they were sort of used to things being codey, if you will. So I think that, to your point, Michael, yes, we have a lot of room for improvement. I personally don't feel like, I feel like, hey, given where we are in the cycle, we've made a lot of progress, but boy, it's early and there's a lot of progress to go, which again, that if it were all figured out, then many of us here wouldn't have big opportunities in front of us, right? If everyone was comfortable with a 40-digit code as an identifier, then probably guys like Brad and Unstoppable would have less of an opportunity. But the simple reality is that there's just a ton of room to make positive improvements.
Cool. And Brad, what I would like to know from you is, in terms of unstoppable domains, humanizing the blockchain address space, how has it helped and what has the impact been since you guys have gone live with it? I know you are available within the Pillar wallet as well. So how has that been, the impact of humanizing it? And yeah.
Of course, and thanks, Matt, for teeing me up there. Yeah, so what we do is we build domain names that are NFTs, and you point your crypto addresses, your crypto wallets to them, and the net effect is I can tell you something like, hey, send me money to brad.crypto, and it just works. And it works. You could send me Bitcoin, you could send me ETH, you could send me any cryptocurrency you want. So it's kind of like a UX layer on top of all blockchains, all wallets, and it's meant to be universal in this way. It's meant to be for any currency, any blockchain, etc. Now the domains or NFTs, they live on one blockchain, but you're able to point them to any cryptocurrency you want. And what people are doing is they are sending and receiving money. It's kind of like decentralized Venmo. But the reason why this is so different than the Web 2 version is that the user is in control. The user owns the domain name forever. No one can take it away from them. They're the only ones who can make updates to it. And it's interoperable. So it works inside of Pillar Wallet. It works inside of Coinbase Wallet. It works inside of blockchain.com. It works inside of my Ether wallet, et cetera, et cetera. And it's the same username. And this is not how Web 2 works at all. In Web 2, you have these silos. You have Venmo, and we both need to transact within Venmo. We both need to use that app, and we need to figure out how to contact each other, and we need to build reputation inside of that app. In the Web 3 world, you control your decentralized identity. That's essentially what a domain name is. And you can use it across any crypto app. So that's like this magic composability feature that crypto has. And I think this is getting at the reason why users are going to move to crypto for payments and for many other things, is because it's going to work better. And I think about the credit card example a lot. And I think that one of the things that got credit card users really excited was subsidies. You get rewards. And so it was essentially a way to motivate the consumer to use this new payment method. Maybe that's the benefit of the merchants, maybe not. The consumer probably doesn't even care or think about it or have any idea. The reason why they started doing it was they're getting incentivized to do it. I think the same thing is going to happen in crypto, where because crypto payments are so easy to make, all of these merchants, all these apps are going to be incentivizing us to pay using these systems, and that's what's going to drive us in. So we're going to get this interoperability, but we're also going to get rewarded. And I think that last piece is probably not quite often talked about enough, but there needs to be a motivation. Like, consumers are not going to, Venmo works great. Credit cards work great. These systems they're broken around the world, but they're not broken for every user. But Web3 can still provide an experience that is 10 times better. So it's not just about people who don't have good access to payment systems today. People in America are going to be using, people around the world are going to be using this stuff when it's better for them to do it. And that's kind of the task for us right now. And I would say that's not fully true right now. Sending a stable coin using a domain name, which is kind of like the full decentralized Venmo experience, probably going to pay $30 transaction fee. We were talking about transaction fees earlier on. I do think it's a UX killer right now for a lot of users. It's impractical. I can't send you $20 because it costs me more than $20 to send it to you. So I think those are kind of like the fundamental technology problems to solve, but they're also totally getting solved. There's just amazing progress in 2021. So there's all kinds of reasons to be optimistic, and we're not there yet. So there's all kinds of opportunity, and everybody wants to come into crypto right now. So we've got all these, we've got all this interest and excitement to capture. We've got all these new people to onboard. So this is a really great time.
So how about the privacy angle then? All I have to do is just type in brad.crypto into Etherscan, and I will see exactly how much money you have in your wallet.
So this is not a domain name specific problem. This is a blockchain problem in general. And yeah, there's going to be some things that you're going to want to do privately. There are already mechanisms to be able to have what's essentially like have us communicate in a secure way, a one-time use address. So there's already ways to do it where you could use these blockchains and get some level of privacy. But if you really want to go further down the privacy route, then there's probably other blockchains that you would want to send your transaction on. You can send, for example, privacy coins using your domain name. That's also possible. So I think that's it's kind of a user choice thing, and I think that's probably the coolest part about Web3 tech in general. The user controls their decentralized identity. The user has any number of ways they can use it. It's really up to them. They can attach their real world identity if they want to. We have a way with a Chainlink Oracle to be able to associate a Twitter handle to your domain. So that pops up before I send money. This is way more similar to how Venmo works, where you get to see some sort of social validation before you just send money off into the darkness. So if it's user controlled, you're going to get all versions. You're going to get completely anonymous privacy version. You're going to get completely public. I want to tell the world what I'm up to version. Like it's more like a personal choice thing. And you see that on social media. You see kind of all variants of private to public. And I'm sure we all fall different places on the spectrum, but if the tech's controlled by the user is going to use it in a lot of different ways.
Cool. Amber, what is your thoughts on this?
Sure. Brad came up with a bunch of different wonderful things that I want to riff on. The first one is that, looking at credit cards, like when credit cards came out, people are like, oh no, checks are gone. Or like when each new thing comes out, it's like, and the previous thing is gone, VHS is gone. All of these things still exist. We still have a lot of AOL subscribers, it turns out. Like there's a lot of AOL accounts, but we don't remember that. There's still like as many people in Second Life as, maybe even more than there was when it hit the news and Wired magazine. So we'll still have credit cards, we'll still have checks, we'll still have possibly PayPal. But when they're smart, they'll have the on-ramps, right? So when we think about rewards, like one of the reasons why I got really excited about Unlock Protocol is because it was for membership NFTs. So you could airdrop a membership to somebody's address, to somebody's wallet, and then give them specific perks, right? So for almost every industry that has perks and wants to check if you have this membership NFT, it's more than just here's an NFT that you've collected. It's like NFTs with superpowers. And that becomes very interesting because it provides the perks side of the equation. I know that going to the Ethereum meetup and RSVPing with Matic and then showing up and getting a little NFT, it was almost like checking in on Foursquare and getting a badge, except it was just this little token of appreciation. It didn't have to mean anything huge. But I felt like I was part of this group. And I think humans are so into that. Like, we're wired to be social people, to be part of groups, to, have these identifiers. That's why sports are so huge. That's why countries are big. We collect. And I think this whole, we would have had this a lot earlier. But when Tim Berners-Lee created the web, he had the error codes set up, like 404 not found, and he had 402 payment required. And he just said reserved for future use. He didn't fill it out because, we were just getting out of NSFNet at that time, which was commercial free. The web hadn't really thought about the idea of commerciality. It was so science oriented. It was just for information communication. So why create a standard for payments at that point in time? And then over time, Web 1.0 didn't have a lot of payment options. Web 2.0 had more payment options. We had, via web with Paul Graham and all these things, and PayPal. Right now, we're all kind of collectively solving that 402 payment required issue. And I think it's super cool because when I was growing up, I thought I had missed out on everything. I was just like, everything's already been done. Like I didn't even get to, which is very silly, right? Because I wanted to work on protocols. I thought they were the coolest thing because no one cared about them. And so now it's like, I find these things like the Interledger Foundation, which is almost, if you look at banking, like I send wire transfers all the time, there's always a $30 transfer fee. But Interledger, you could send anything to anything, seamlessly. Like the level of interesting protocols that are coming out that like are taking a step back from the web and saying, what can we do that's going to last for 10 or 20 or 30 years that means something? This is so much better than, oh my gosh, let's make another social network. It's like, I was going absolutely insane during that time. Like the social network is us. It can be anywhere. It can be over Twitter and in real life, whatever. But that era, it's about playfulness again. And that reminds me of like much more of the early web that, hey, artists are back, musicians are back. Like they disappeared from like the flattening of culture that happened in Web 2.0. And I'm just glad, I hopefully that doesn't mean Web 4.0 is another flattening of culture, but I hope that this one is rebonding what was kind of torn apart, that developers get aesthetics and aesthetically oriented artists become developers, that there's no longer the idea that these things are separate. It's just a tool. It's not eating you. And it's also like, that we're not sitting there thinking that the world is always the way it is. Like we're like inspired to like constantly change what we're thinking about. I think the other thing is like for some people, like they need stability. So, it's not that everything is crazy and everything's doomed. And it's like this, weird pot of flowers that's always decaying and there's new species, like that's great. But I think there's also like some stable parts that are kind of evergreen that we need to focus on. Because as we all, let's say, get into our 60s or 70s, we're going to want things to not move around so much and not have to worry about our like ETH getting taken away by like touching, a part of our table that's like has a RFID on it, something ridiculous like that.
So based on what you've said, how do you see artists from the global south being incorporated? Say, imagine an artist from Guatemala or Ethiopia who do not have access to the crypto space or even to pay the gas fees. And they're pretty much excluded from the NFT craze going at the moment. So it is a bit of a UX issue as well here. So how do we encourage them or include them?
Yeah, a couple different ways. One, if you use interledger payment pointers, you can seamlessly send, you can send anything from any currency to any other currency without the transaction fee. But you need to have a compatible wallet. And right now, only 2 wallets support this, GateHub and Uphold. So if I wanted to pay somebody in Nigerian money like Naira, right, that would be hard for them typically to be able to take it out and then transfer it into that. So either people adopt crypto all over the world, or you look at the different kinds of tech, like Matic, for instance. You could sell something in Matic, you could sell something in Solana. You could do things in these different zones, but the issue is that you still have to convert them, or you don't, right? Swapping them, there's tax issues and things like that. So what I've been seeing from everywhere is that, also like on Reddit too, there's the Reddit kind of cryptocurrency, the moons. I have seen people from other countries be like, hey, if I just post quality content on Reddit, I get paid 10 times the amount of my hourly wage in my country. And this has been really interesting. So in a way, if I send somebody a bunch of Ethereum or something like that in another country, like it could change their life. So I think there's some interesting ideas here, like especially there's microloans, there's zones where like some countries are adopting crypto as their base currency, which is a relief. Like we'll see. I mean, or at least Bitcoin. I mean, that's what Bitcoin is really built for, to be non-inflationary. So I'm hoping that, I think it's going to take people coming in and educating people playing around, and also like what people don't want, and there's a great book on this, which everybody should read, called Blockchain Chicken Farm. It's about stories of cryptocurrency and blockchain in rural China. And it's written by a Chinese American that went to some very small villages and looked at the adoption and how people are doing. There's just a lot of patterns on like how to do this, how not to do this, how to make sure it's emergent instead of top down. You don't want to go on like, you know, religious missions to another country and then leave them high and dry the next year. You want people to learn themselves, and you want them to be self-sustainable and smart, and then, you know, surprise you. You don't want it to be this whole top-down, we have all of the answers and you don't have anything. And I think the mobile side is going to become incredibly important, and, you know, over really low bandwidth. But, you know, these are the things of like, when we see countries censoring things, when we see dictatorial governments, that's when these things thrive. And that's when we'll see people collaborating across boundaries to try to build strange and interesting solutions to help out. So I'm excited to see that. And I think we've already begun to see a little bit of it. And I think we'll just see more and more of it as time goes on.
Okay. So Matt, one of the strengths of Blocknative is having mempool level access that you provide to the user. And how do you see this helping the UX side and the adoption? And first of all, when you start explaining this, please tell us a little bit about what mempool is, so that not everyone.
Sure. So blockchains are public consensus networks, right? So you submit a transaction, and folks, the machines in the network basically try to include your transaction. And when they do, they all look at the transaction set of blocks and they say, thumbs up, this is good. And it becomes a confirmed transaction or finalized. What happens before all of that? What is the pre-consensus layer? So where does your transaction go before it is included? People actually I ask this question all the time. I never really thought about that. I go, it's got to go somewhere, right? You submit the transaction, it hasn't been included, and this is known as the mempool in virtually every major public blockchain network. So the mempool is the pre-consensus layer where candidate transactions go in order to be considered by miners, by members of the network for inclusion. And it turns out the mempool is kind of a fascinating place. It's quite a bit different than the rest of any other aspect of blockchain infrastructure, because it's a real-time environment. You know, the Ethereum blockchain, for instance, clicks forward like a watch about every 13.5 seconds on average. But transactions can enter the mempool at any moment. It's sub-second responses. And the world of the blockchain is these days, Ethereum's, I don't know, on the order of 13, 15 transactions per second total throughput, whereas you can see spikes in the mempool of over 1,000 transactions per second. So it tends to be sort of a weird and unusual place. And the problem is what happens in the mempool really matters in terms of transaction settlement. So, you know, all transactions, whether you're doing a credit card transaction, a stock transaction, or a crypto transaction, have to settle, be finalized. And there's 3 core dimensions of that: time to settle, cost to settle, in terms of settlement. And it turns out that the mempool, what's going on in the mempool, impacts all 3 of those. So if there's not much going on in the network, your transaction fees are going to be lower, your time to confirm is going to be higher, time to confirm will be faster, and your terms of settlement, like the rates of exchange, will generally be more favorable for you. Conversely, a big NFT drop happens, surge of demand on the network, fees go through the roof, time to confirm goes through the roof, terms of settlement are all over the place. And actually what that winds up being is you have lower predictability. You actually don't know what's going to happen in terms of settlement. Your transaction could fail or get dropped, and then you're left sort of wondering what's going on. So it turns out there's this mysterious area, which isn't really explicit. It's got this really massive data environment associated with it. It impacts all participants in the network. Every person transacting, every protocol, every wallet has to deal with this, and it's really hard to work with. And so what we do, my company Blocknative, is we built a global data platform to manage all of that, to make it as easy to use and as programmable as any other aspect of the infrastructure. And you may have experienced this yourself in the form of, when you submit a transaction, it says transaction pending, right? You see a little pop-up that comes up, and then it will say transaction confirmed, transaction stalled, transaction dropped, right? If you speed up or replace a transaction. We have libraries that are widely deployed across the ecosystem to provide user feedback. And by the way, it came at a very at the very beginning of our company. We're actually building, strangely enough, an NFT platform way back in 2017. If only we'd stuck with that original idea. What we found was the process of doing crypto transactions was full of ghost clicks. I mean, you do stuff and you would get no feedback. And it was super anxiety inducing because you're moving real value around, you're moving money in many cases, and you have no idea what's going on. And when we did user testing, users hated this. And basically what users did is they froze, they're confused, they're scared, they're intimidated, they're anxious. And guess what? You tend not to act when you have those emotions going through you. And so we did a bunch of experimentation to try to figure out what are ways that we could better inform the user, give them real-time feedback, and therefore clarify what was going on and give them confidence and reduce transaction anxiety. And it turns out it works. Like it actually has measurable impact in the number of users that transact, how often they transact, and the value with which they transact when you give them better information about what's going on. So this is just sort of basic human-oriented design. The great news about crypto is a lot of this data is out there. It's just somewhat difficult to access, but commercial entities like ourselves and others can make this much more approachable for folks to work with. And so, while we see this massive explosion of the creator economy and this whole new career path that's going to be formed for original artists, which, by the way, is a father of kids who have creative talents, like, it's so easy to be like, well, maybe as a hobby, you'll do this, but like as your career, you should basically be an actuary, right? And you can see their little hearts sort of crumble a little bit. And now we can say with NFTs, you can say, hey, guess what? Being a photographer, being a painter, being a sculptor, maybe one of the best sorts of forms of making a living that's ever existed, right? Which is pretty exciting to think about, and pretty empowering. And so, hey, if we're going to get there, we got to make this whole ecosystem more human, more approachable, and easier. And again, I think we're making great progress, but we got a long way to go.
Cool. So Brad, we've kind of touched up a little bit on the privacy side and the things that can be done. What is next for Unstoppable Domains, and what wonderful things can we see to aid the usability and potential futuristic things you guys have in mind?
I think one of the biggest directions that you're going to see from us is around login, and identity. And so I think one of the things about domain names back in the 1990s is that they did have a goal to be more like identities, and people were buying them, consumers were buying them and launching their own websites. This was kind of like in the very early days, where the idea was that the user would actually control their own data. Web 2 was kind of like, we hand over our data to these third-party platforms. This isn't exclusively true. There were versions of this in Web 1 as well. But the idea was early on that the user would kind of be more in control. You can use it to receive a message like email. Consumers can identify and share their blogs, etc. There were things missing like payments, which I think is like probably the biggest thing that crypto brings to the table. But ultimately, you don't need all of these different identifiers on the internet. In fact, it actually leads to a lot of the fraud that we see on the internet, which is that I can create, one Facebook profile and pretend to be this person, and I can create some profile on a payments app, and there's not this unification of all of these different identities. And I think that what we can wind up with in a more secure new internet is, I've got the same username, and you can send me money. You can check out my website. You can send me a message. I can log in with it. I can build a reputation with it. So kind of having all of these things be one is the direction that you're gonna see from us.
Okay, cool. So just a question to all of you guys, really, this one. How do you guys see the development of communities? And it could be the dinner DAO or those type of communities whereby let's say that they use a Discord channel or a Telegram channel, and combining it with a bot, and you want to send them some crypto, and you say a specific command /send from within the Telegram, and then slash send to Amber, then it picks out and it sends you a specific token. So reducing this friction we see, you have to log into MetaMask or the Pillar wallet or this other wallet, you have to understand gas prices. Oh, there are lots of jargons. How do you see this sort of development happening in the coming future? Any one of you guys can pick this up.
Well, I think one thing that's going to, oh, sorry, you first.
Okay. I'll try to make mine short. I just think that we already have all the jargon of the web. We have web browsers and HTTP and www and websites. Like, we have thousands of words about the web. Like, and now we can't handle a bunch of words about DeFi and like crypto. Come on. Like, if a kid can memorize like all of the Pokemon, we can memorize all sorts of things, because like, it's like, oh, I can't do this because it's like, come on, you know, every single major celebrity and all of the different films and all the different directors and what they did on each timeline. Like, I don't want to hear it that you can install MetaMask and like understand a gas fee. Like, come on, you can drive a car, you can operate a lawnmower, you can install something in your house. Like, this is just the new norm. It's not like, oh no, let's make it all eat. Like, we need to, as self-sovereign individuals, be able to do these things, because we should be our own banks and we should be our own creators. This is necessary and this is awesome. And let's keep going and it's going to be okay. Sorry.
So your take is tough love.
Yeah, it's being on a playground. We'll learn it. It's hard, but like a lot of people are doing it. We got a bunch of older brothers and sisters that we look up to, and we're gonna get there.
And Brad, you were saying,
I just think crypto wallets are coming to a consumer app near you, and so that's also making it super easy. I think Puma browser has one. Brave browser has one, Opera browser has one, MetaMask is an extension inside of the browsers that you use. And so it's just getting, Reddit is building one, sounds like Twitter is building one. I think there's a rumor that Discord's building one. So like crypto wallets are coming to all of these consumer apps, and it's just going to get baked into the app. And apps will, do that in varying ways of quality UX, but ultimately, like a crypto wallet is coming to whatever consumer app you're using, I believe, and that is just going to make it not a choice for users. If you want to use these cool features, you got to figure out how this part works. I also think that you're going to see some smarter, more user-friendly versions of custody. You're already seeing there's already a lot of great stuff. There's already a lot of like backup using this tool, and backup your private key encrypted using this tool or that tool. There's already early versions of it, but it's not really good yet, and that is missing. And it's actually more missing, I would say, in the NFT world right now than it is in, say, the regular crypto world, because most people, let's be honest, most people are probably storing their crypto in Coinbase. You have your hot wallet, like you've got your MetaMask wallet, which is like, that's like what you're carrying around in your pocket. That's like what you're using. But storage oftentimes is elsewhere. The NFT world doesn't have that equivalent yet. There's not really great custodians for NFTs yet. So that's a really big user experience piece that is coming, and I think is going to be a big unlock.
It's interesting. I think Amber raised this analogy of the older sibling to sort of guide you, and it's very apt. And I can say, for those of us who are in the industry, we all have our older siblings who came and were very patient with us and answered our question and got us going. And I personally, and I encourage others to pay it forward, that when others express curiosity and when others are curious, that we do the same thing, that we, as individuals, as participants, very patient and answer questions and be thoughtful about that. The nice thing about chatbots is it's scalable older sibling. Like, what if I don't have an older sibling? What if I'm curious about these things, but I don't know someone who's already well connected? I've been building startups for a long time, and my first startup was an internet company back in 1994, right? And just think about what you needed to do to get to the actual internet, not the play internet, the AOL, but the real internet. Like, you needed to go to the computer store and get a piece of hardware. You had to open up your box and put something inside of it. Then, by the way, most of the time, your operating system lacked a TCP/IP stack. You didn't know what one was. You had to know where to get it. You had to know how to install it. Okay. You then had to go and find a browser. You need to know what a browser was, which, by the way, you couldn't find anywhere. You couldn't really read about it, right? And then you had to find a browser, install. And then once you did that, you had to know what to type into the browser to find something interesting. And only after doing all of that stuff could you actually do something relevant and useful, right? Turns out that a lot of people like me spent a lot of time coaching people through that, okay? Because it was hard. Fast forward to today, and we have these devices, and like it's all baked in, right? No one thinks about any of that stuff, right? But the same is true of crypto. And I think that we have this whole opportunity to guide folks through and to be empathetic towards those who are actually curious about it, who may come from different cultures, who may have different sets of financial resources, but want to be involved. And I love that aspect of today is it's equally accessible to anyone who is sufficiently curious. But if you're not sufficiently curious, it's going to be a really bad time. Okay. And so I don't spend a lot of time trying to convince people who are skeptical to be not skeptical, besides family members, because it's kind of unavoidable. But besides that, right, you do it. And here's the part that I say is like, what's the definition of being rich? Okay. It's when your money makes money. It's when your money works for you. Okay. The problem with being rich historically is you have to have a lot of money to start. And you have to have access to specialized knowledge and services in order to start to have your money make money, right? And what crypto does is democratize this. It takes all of these ideas and makes them equally accessible. So your money can make money with just a few dollars of value, which again, if you're in a different part of the world, that can be life-changing, right? Also, if you're young, because by the way, anyone can create a crypto wallet, doesn't check your ID, you can have the law of compounding interest start to kick in as a preteen, right? Turns out you take a small amount of money, you put it in at a reasonably decent percentage rate, which is not that hard to achieve, and you compound it over 40 years, and it turns out to be a life-changing sum of money, right? And so these ideas, the accessibility of knowledge, the accessibility of these concepts is potentially transformative to folks all over the world for those who are sufficiently curious, okay? And I think that is the barrier. If you're curious, it's very receptive. If you're not curious, it's going to take a while, okay? Just like if you're curious about the internet, you could get to it, but if you're not curious, it's going to take a while. And my focus, and I would encourage folks out there, is to really lean into the curious. And for those who are not curious or skeptical, they'll come along over time, but you know what? We'll just waste a bunch of energy trying to convince them to care. End of my rant.
Awesome. Because the thing, I have an issue here. I mean, we've got an hour, we've nearly done the hour, and I still have a few questions of myself and the audience, which Amber has been doing a diligent job of answering all their questions. But I still have one, well, we've got 1 minute, and within 1 minute, we can answer one quick question, which Amber has answered as well. So I'll open to the other guys through. So the question is, would it be a smart idea to copy what the legacy financial system has done in terms of UX in order to facilitate seamless integration into mass adoption? Amber has given an extensive answer to this. And if you guys feel like picking it up and have an idea on top of it, why not?
Totally depends. Some features, yes. Some features, no. I think like Venmo style user experience is great. I think a lot of what you get with banking and credit cards is not so great. I think it's a mixed bag. There's also a lot of new UX that wouldn't be possible in the old world. There's a lot of new features. Programmable money leads to all kinds of new features. So I think maybe even most of the white space, most of the stuff will actually be new features rather than riffs on old features. That's just my guess. I don't know that to be true.
Cool. So I think we have come to the end of our session. We've got 55 minutes going in already. We've got a couple of minutes to wrap up. And for me, this was fascinating, and I would love to engage more because I've got a list of questions to ask you guys and to debate with you guys. And unfortunately, we're coming to the end. And thank you so much, Amber. Thank you so much, Matt, and thank you so much, Brad. And I hope to see you guys soon again. And we've got a poll which will be displayed at the end. And please fill in so that we will have more of your thoughts and we take that on board. And the next, if Brian, yep, and the next section will be, we have a POAP to claim, an NFT. And if you can join our Discord at chat.pillar.fi and go into the news channel and DM the POAP bot and the code word redefine. I'm going to need it. This is about DeFi usability, and I'm just telling you what to do. Why not just play a video and show you how it is done?
Claiming the NFTs Pillar is giving away to celebrate the webinars is easy. After watching the webinar and taking note of the secret word, I'll go to the Pillar Discord and look for the POAP bot. That's short for Proof of Attendance Protocol. Then I'll tell it the secret word. It'll give me a link that takes me to the giveaway page, where I need to paste my Pillar V2 address. To get my address, on my Pillar V2 home screen, I can tap on Receive, then on Copy Address. It has to be my Pillar V2 address. My legacy address will not work. Now I can paste the address on the POAP website and click on Mint. After a while, I'll see the collectible show up under NFT xDai.
Thank you, Pablo, for the video. And if you would like to repeat this video, you can find it in our YouTube channel. Just go to YouTube and type Pillar. And for future events, please check out pillar.fi/events and follow us on our Twitter, @pillarwallet, and chat.pillar.fi for our Discord, and pillar.fi for our website. And again, don't forget the poll at the end, to fill in the poll at the end of this session. Thank you so much for everyone that attended, and thank you so much for the panelists. It has been my pleasure. Thank you.
Michael.